Conservancy. I've been with the Urban Conservancy since about 2006. In that time, a lot has changed both within New Orleans and within the Urban Conservancy and the work that we do, but our core work has always been focused on promoting the wise stewardship of the built environment and local economies. Since Katrina, our understanding of our relationship with water as a city has changed, and that is really the impetus for the beginning of the Front Yard Initiative, where we're learning that in order to live here, we need to learn to live with water. And so we really applaud you all for taking this step, because it's going to take all of us doing our part to manage water where it falls, rather than relying on our aging infrastructure, gray infrastructure. That's part of it, but you're a big part of it too. And I'd just like to say, I don't want to take up too much time with this, but I just want to thank you for coming, and remind you that, or just kind of encourage you to keep your ears kind of open as you're embarking on this project, about conversations happening at the city level, at the higher level, about how things like what you are doing fits into the bigger picture of what the city is trying to do. So you're going to hear probably this year more conversations about stormwater fees as a way to fund stormwater management, which is what you are doing now, primarily through this program. Even if your project is selected, a big part of the onus of paying for this falls on you. There has to be a way where this is made more equitable, so that people all over the city are receiving these sorts of benefits without the burden of the cost of it falling to you, because this is a community benefit. What you are doing for your property is also a benefit for your neighborhood. So that's really important for us to know, and for us to advocate for the city to, the city decision makers to understand too. So there's a role there for all of us, as well as to be advocates of this kind of solution. And other than that, I just want to quickly introduce Sam Kamajer. You'll be hearing a lot from her this morning, who is our UC Urban Conservancy Program Manager, and Matthew Raschuti, who is also going to be assisting in fielding questions and making sure we're taking care of you today. Other than that, I think, like I said, if you ask any questions you have in the chat as we go along, and we'll get to them as we can, but we'll also have time at the end for more questions. And finally, before I turn it over to Sam, I'm going to pop up a quick little poll here. If you just quickly answer, let us know which council district you're in, and it gives us an idea where everybody lives. Yeah, with new council members, a lot of it's, you may not know yet who your council person is. Okay, we got pretty. Give it 15 more seconds. All right. So interesting. We have a pretty big mix, but anybody who says they don't know, if you're curious, we can help you figure that out too. I mean, it's a great thing to know. So because those are people that you can talk to and help get some of those issues in your neighborhood that affect your quality of life taken care of. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sam. And again, just welcome and thank you for being here. I'm not going to turn it over to Sam because I think Sam is helping someone else get into the meeting room.
Okay, guys, I'm so sorry. This is very embarrassing. Let's just get started and we can talk more about how.
Sam.
Oh my God, am I still muted? No. I'm muted?
No,
I can hear Sam.
Okay, Dana's just trying to embarrass me more. All right, so I'm gonna get
Can't hear you,
started.
Sam.
Did she say she can't hear me
Sam, we
still?
cannot.
we can hear
Okay.
you.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Dana's just trying to ruin this for me. So, oh great. Now, let's see. Do presenter view. All right. So as Dana said, my name is Sam. I am the program manager at Urban Conservancy, which is a nonprofit in New Orleans focused on equitable land use. Welcome to the Front Yard Initiative Design Workshop. The Front Yard Initiative is the UC's response to excessive paving in New Orleans. We help individuals remove unwanted paving from their properties to promote a more beautiful and resilient New Orleans. During the first part of this workshop, we're going to discuss the challenges New Orleans face when it comes to stormwater. Then we'll learn a little bit about green infrastructure, what it is and how it can help with stormwater management on your property. And then we're going to go over the FYI process, how it helps homeowners combat stormwater issues, what the next steps are, etc. Finally, we'll review some past FYI projects, approved design submissions, and aspects to including your design submissions to make it more competitive for our program. Dana already went over this, but please submit any questions you have in the chat and she will be going over them, and we will stay on afterwards, which is optional. Y'all can leave after the mandatory workshop, but we will stay on to answer any questions and have a chat. All right. So as we have mentioned, FYI is a program of the Urban Conservancy. We help individuals manage stormwater on their property, not only through the financial assistance that we provide, but also through advocacy, education, and technical assistance. So now we're going to talk about what it means to live with water in a city that has a very complex relationship with it. So for many residents, this photo represents what it means to live with water. After an average rain event, we have ankle-deep water, drowned cars, standing water for days on end, mosquitoes, and even duck ponds. But water does not and should not be a bad thing. New Orleans was actually settled by the European colonizers specifically for the region's unique water assets. The lake, the river, and the Gulf were all extraordinary means of commerce at the time, but they also complicated the logistics of settling in this low-lying swampy area surrounded by water that would and still does regularly flood. So first aspect of our environment that we take into consideration is obviously the amount of rainfall we receive. You can see from this map that we live in one of the rainiest areas of the country. We actually exceeded our average rainfall of 63 inches last year in August, ultimately reaching a total of 86 inches by the end of the year. So that's a lot more water than we're used to seeing, and this is partially due to climate change, which is increasing the frequency and strength of storms. So despite having a heavy yearly rainfall, we don't actually have that many more rainy days than the country's average. And that's because when it rains here, it pours. This quick deluge of water can and does quickly overwhelm our drainage system. It's the difference between like dumping a whole bucket of water down the drain and trickling in a cup at a time. Rain isn't our only challenge we take into consideration. New Orleans, as you can see from this map, sits at a very low elevation. The areas in blue are below sea level and the areas in red are above sea level. Elevation ranges only fluctuate between 15 feet below and 10 feet above sea level, with about 50% of the city above. This is really different from places that can vary in hundreds of feet in elevation. Most of New Orleans used to actually be above sea level. That's because early New Orleans was only situated on the higher land near the river, created from seasonal flooding, which deposited sediment and created new land. As technology advanced, people were able to pump out water and make what was once marshland suitable for permanent structures. This has several unfortunate consequences, one being an increase in subsidence. So subsidence is just a word that means the sinking of land. Many of you are probably overly familiar with this concept. Subsidence leads to foundation shifting, sinking for homes, potholes that appear overnight, and yes, more flooding. New Orleans is particularly susceptible to subsidence due to the high levels of what we call shrink swell soils, such as clay. So when these soils dry out, they become like a desiccated sponge, and they can't be revived to their original volume. Overdevelopment has also exacerbated our flooding issue. As you can see from this aerial view of New Orleans, what was once all wetlands has been completely paved over. We have taken a permeable surface and made it impermeable. This leads us to rely almost solely on the city's pumping system to remove stormwater and prevents the water table from being naturally recharged, leading to further subsidence. The excessive amount of impermeable surfaces is creating more runoff, and that's runoff that our drainage system just can't handle. The Sewage and Water Board's website says that an intense rainstorm that drops more than an inch of water in an hour will most likely outpace the system's capability. But we all know that a rainstorm that only drops an inch of rain in an hour is not very intense or very uncommon in New Orleans. Despite this, we have an excessive amount of impermeable surfaces that are creating 36 times more runoff than green spaces. Finally, we are overly reliant on that inadequate and antiquated great infrastructure. So great infrastructure refers to any traditional form of water management. These are things such as levees, floodgates, and pumping systems or basins. At the city level, we've heavily relied on a single approach to water management. Every drop that falls must be pumped out. This approach is not only resource intensive, but is also a leading cause of subsidence in our region. So we end up at an even lower elevation than where we started. And now we have these great big concrete walls, yes, preventing seasonal flooding, but also preventing new soil being introduced to our quickly depleting lands. Part of the reason our gray infrastructure fails regularly is because of its age and our lack of data to appropriately address this issue. This is a map taken from the Sewage and Water Board's website. Everything in red represents a water type pipe that was installed over 80 years ago. So according to the Sewage and Water Board, industry standards suggest typical water mains have a life expectancy of only about 50 years. So this isn't great. There's actually no equivalent to this map for drainage pipes, which is in itself a problem. But anecdotally, we do know that all the city's drainage pipes leave a lot to be desired. Pipes meant to convey runoff away from streets and homes are so degraded that they are often described as Swiss cheese when they're taken out, and so clogged that we're finding cars in them. So, as we've discussed, excessive impermeable surfaces can cause flooding and standing water issues. But are there other issues with concrete? Well, it's also ugly for one. Yards can be turned into parking lots. It's unsafe. Sidewalks end up getting blocked by cars, causing accessibility issues and forcing pedestrians into the street. It's expensive. It creates more runoff, which your tax dollars have to pay to be pumped out. It's actually also a huge CO2 emitter. Cement contributes around 8% of the world's annual carbon emissions. And finally, it's illegal. The city defines excessive paving in the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, or the CZO, in most neighborhoods as over 40% of the front yard being covered in an impermeable surface. And if you do pave illegally, the city of New Orleans might cite your property, meaning that there are consequences. You'll probably have to remove all that paving that you just paid to have laid down, and the city is not going to help you pay to do this. While far from an ideal situation, the city is beginning to recognize that paving removal is essential to New Orleans' resilience and are taking strides to require water management improvements on residential properties. So a lot of New Orleans solutions need or require holistic, systematic interventions and are not within any one individual's control. However, one small step in the right direction is residential green infrastructure. By removing impermeable surfaces and installing green infrastructure, residents can help reduce flood risk and subsidence, especially for their own property. This is the after picture to that original duck pond we looked at earlier, after an equivalent rain event. This resident took that step and replaced their concrete with green infrastructure. All the rainfall is held on site in a bioswale and a permeable driveway instead of sitting next to their foundation and flooding their car. Rain has changed from a stressful event to a peaceful one. The homeowners no longer have to rush out to move their cars or create makeshift bridges to reach their home. And since they are at a lower elevation than the surrounding area, they are also reducing flood risk for their neighbors. Green infrastructure and plants not only help reduce the threat of flooding, but have multiple benefits. For example, added trees decrease the heat island effect. Native plants bring back lost habitat, important to wildlife and pollinators, and new green spaces encourage people to get outside. In the next portion of the workshop, we're going to discuss what green infrastructure is. So green infrastructure can come in many forms, but it is basically any system that mimics nature to manage stormwater. There are three main ways green infrastructure helps manage stormwater: retention, detention, and filtration. Retention is the holding of water. So when stormwater is retained, it will never go into our drainage system and instead infiltrate into the ground, watering our plants, recharging the water table, and stabilizing our soils. Detention is the slowing down of water. So when stormwater is detained, it will eventually go into our drainage system, but not immediately. This alleviates pressure and reduces the risk of overwhelming the drainage system. A rain barrel is an example of green infrastructure that detains water. Filtration is exactly what it sounds like. Green infrastructure can remove pollutants from our stormwater. There are actually no filtration systems in place for stormwater, so when runoff hits our catch basins, it gets pumped straight into Lake Pontchartrain as is, which is why you're not supposed to dump into the basins. Let's take a look at some popular forms of green infrastructure that can be incorporated into your design. So native plants are one of the easiest but still extremely effective forms of green infrastructure. Native plants have evolved alongside our ecosystem for a very, very long time, making them well suited to thrive here. They're made to survive our hot summers, our occasional freezes, our deluges, our dry periods, our humidity, our soil, you name it. So this means less time spent on maintenance, less money spent on replacement plants, and that you are creating lost habitat for native pollinators, birds, and other critters. Native plants are also just plain beautiful and add to the singular culture of New Orleans. So also, how do native plants aid in water management? Well, just check out the roots. Turf grass has roots less than 1 foot compared to switchgrass, whose roots grow up to 9 feet. The deeper the roots, the more rainwater they're absorbing. Roots hold soil in place, preventing subsidence and erosion, and at the same time aerates the soil, keeping it flexible and preventing compaction. Plus, this is why native plants do better during our long stretches of dry weather. The roots have evolved in order to be able to reach groundwater. Some plants are even known to remove harsh pollutants from our water and soil. We have compiled a pamphlet of some really great native plants that you received and is available on our website to get you started. You can take your native plants a step further and plant them in a rain garden. Rain gardens are another popular but a bit more involved type of green infrastructure. They're an excavated area that uses specific soil mixes and native water-loving plants to create storage space for water, slowing, retaining, and filtering stormwater before it reaches our drainage system. Here's a good look at the excavation required to build a rain garden. We recommend somewhere between 6 inches and 3 feet. The deeper you excavate, the more stormwater holding capacity you create, but also the more expensive the installation becomes. When you fill the garden bed, you want to use a well-draining soil to encourage runoff to infiltrate. We recommend a mix of 80 to 90% sand, 10 to 20% topsoil, and 3 to 5% organic matter or compost. There are some local shops that sell rain garden soil-specific mixes, such as Smelly's. Sand is made of large particles that create void space for water to seep into. The mostly clay soil that is super prevalent in New Orleans, on the other hand, is often so compacted that it can almost be as impermeable as concrete. It also isn't healthy enough to sustain the new environment you are trying to create. The public right-of-way is the space between the sidewalk and the street. It is the city's property, but you can actually remove accessing paving and install a green infrastructure or a colorful garden like this one. It's a great example of how even tiny spaces can be transformed to greatly enhance your outdoor spaces and manage stormwater. Green infrastructure isn't just about stormwater management, but creating a more aesthetic, healthy environment for everyone to live in. And just something to mention right here, because a lot of people do end up working in their right-of-way, is that as far as we are aware, you do not need a permit to work in your right-of-way. You do need a permit if you plan to do any work on your sidewalk, your driveway apron, or any curb cuts. Always talk to your contractor whether or not they plan to get the correct permits, or if they expect you to get the correct permits. Because ultimately, you are responsible for getting the correct permits for your project. We are available to help with any questions with that. Here's a cross-sectional view of a rain garden. You can see, like most green infrastructures, that there's a lot going on underneath the surface that aids in water management. Some rain gardens keep it simple, such as the colorful image, while other rain gardens use multiple layers and different materials to optimize water infiltration, such as the black and white image. Permeable surfaces are another form of green infrastructure. Pictured here is geogrid and crushed gravel being installed for a permeable driveway. Permeable surfaces can include permeable driveways, pathways, patios, or infiltration trenches, otherwise known as French drains. This creates storage space for stormwater to go and maintains a stable area suitable for light vehicular and pedestrian traffic. The pictured driveway can hold over 2,000 gallons of stormwater. This homeowner's first floor used to flood during a typical rain event, but now, even after 5 inches of rain, they are left with no standing water. Remember, most of what makes green infrastructure effective is what's going on beneath the surface. As you can see here, an area has been excavated with the middle dug even deeper for a perforated pipe to be placed. This creates more storage space for runoff and controls the conveyance of that runoff. The pipe is then covered with number 57 washed gravel, which is a very popular choice of aggregate, and this creates void space for water to be stored. Then the whole area is covered with a non-woven permeable filter fabric. This prevents debris from clogging the void space in order to maintain the installation's permeability over time. The finished product is a permeable driveway and a rain garden that holds an estimated 4,000 gallons of stormwater. You can even have permeable pathways within a garden. The gravel paths link water storage throughout. This is a good example of a mix of materials working together for compounding effects. Here's an example of a unique permeable patio made of reclaimed broken concrete with mondo grass planted between. It keeps that patio feel without sacrificing permeability. But some patios are deeply excavated and backfilled with aggregate in order to create a lot of storage space for stormwater, such as this next one. So this is a video. Hopefully it plays. I'll just intro it real quick. This homeowner, Miss D, was experiencing standing water issues days after rain. She would even get water inside of her house sometimes. The issue was exacerbated after her neighbor put in an impermeable patio. This caused a lot of the neighbor's runoff to go into her yard. Okay, let's see if it plays. Dana, can you shake your head if it's playing? Awesome. So as you can see from this video, this permeable patio is not only a great stormwater management tool, but a quality of life improvement as well. So rain barrels are another form of green infrastructure. They capture runoff from impermeable surfaces such as a roof and hold that stormwater for later use. The rain barrels pictured are directly connected to the home's rain gutters. This is an example of detaining water. The rain barrels are not meant to hold this water forever, but are preventing it from going into the drainage system for the moment. Rain barrels work best alongside rain gardens or infiltration trenches as pictured. This way they can be easily drained before the next storm. There's no point in holding the same 50 gallons of stormwater indefinitely. Rain barrels may not have the largest capacity for storing stormwater, but they encourage people to view stormwater as a resource, not just a nuisance. Rainwater is also way better for your plants. So there are many more forms of green infrastructure, and we don't have time to go into them today, such as this beautiful bioretention area. They vary in scale and purpose, but ultimately strive to achieve the same thing, managing water in a sustainable manner. Now that you know more about green infrastructure and understand the framework of why we do the Front Yard Initiative, I'm going to go over the process of the program a little bit more. And if you're interested, this installation holds over 20,000 gallons of stormwater, so very impressive. Just a quick reminder to put any questions you may have in the chat. Dana is monitoring and answering the questions there. And also that we will be staying on after the presentation to chat a little bit more, but that's optional. Now moving on to the specifics of the Front Yard Initiative program.
Yeah,
Yes.
just before we start, there have been a couple questions about visibility from the street. People who have either concrete in their backyard or their side yard that it's not visible from the street, perhaps because there's a fence blocking it that is opaque. But Just a point of clarification, there was a time when we were including incentive, the incentive for backyard, but that became really problematic in a lot of ways that I'm not sure if Sam has time to go into, but there are reasons that we do just from the front and the side. And one of the main ones is that we want people to be able to see it. It's really important at this stage in the game with these projects that it's still something that's highly visible, that when people see the FYI sign in your front yard that you are completed this program, that they look and they see green. They don't see the concrete, and they see a change, and they can see what has happened there. So we're looking for that transformative aspect, and it needs to be visible to the public essentially for that square footage to be reimbursed for removal.
Yes. If you do have concrete in your backyard, though, you can still submit a design for that, and we will still help you through the process. So please don't feel discouraged to go on to the next step or have a chat with us about it, just because it doesn't necessarily qualify for the standard FYI reimbursement, because we still might be able to help you in some way if it's not just to connect you with someone else. But yeah, I can't tell you how many of the homeowners stop me and be like, yeah, my neighbors had so many questions and now they're inspired to do this too. So that is part of the point of our program. So now we're going to move on to the specifics of the Front Yard Initiative program. FYI is a reimbursement program to work with homeowners to manage their water where it lands and help reduce localized flooding. We reimburse eligible homeowners for pavement removal at $2.50 per square foot up to 500 square feet. That means the maximum reimbursement is $1,250. Due to limited funding, we want to utilize the funds as effectively as possible. This does unfortunately mean that the FYI is a somewhat competitive program. Your project can be perfectly acceptable, but still be rejected because we receive an absolutely amazing batches of designs this round. If your design is not chosen, you are always welcome to reapply during our next round of funding. We will also remain available to help homeowners navigate the process, answer any questions, and just help them in any way we can to go from gray to green with or without our funding. Eligible homeowners include those of you who live in your home and those of you who also own a rental property with long-term tenants. We want to ensure both homeowners and tenants get to experience the benefits of green infrastructure. So if you're a landlord and want to install and maintain green infrastructure on your property, we're happy to consider your property as well. When choosing projects to fund, in addition to concrete removal, we look for projects with visibility, which is why we now only reimburse for yards visible from the street, so mostly front and side yards. Inspirational projects. Inspire yourself to dive deep into green infrastructure and native plants. Be a catalyst for your neighbors, family, and friends. Projects with high on-site water capture. Remember, green infrastructure is specifically designed to store much more water than traditional landscaping. Our final consideration is the percentage of paving removed. If you have 500 square feet of paving or more and remove all of it, that's amazing. If you have 500 and you only remove 100, not as much. We only have so much funding available during any given year, so please keep these aspects in mind when creating and submitting your design. If you are currently parked in your front yard and intend to continue, we will not be able to fund your project. Legally, cars must be parked behind the facade of the house. This is the FYI Project Timeline. You should have received this timeline via email, but it is also available on our website. You've already told us some about you and your property, and now you are at step 3, attend a FYI workshop. The next step is to create a before and after design for your space. This design is your plan to go from gray, lots of impermeable concrete, to green, plants, permeable spaces, and other forms of green infrastructure. After this workshop, you will receive an email from FYI prompting you to upload your design. You will have 2 weeks to craft your design. It's due Monday, February 7th. Our toolkit and native plant list attached to the workshop reminder email are great resources to use during this step, and we have a lot of additional helpful resources on our website. And once again, we're always available for email or calls to discuss your design. After that, FYI staff will review all designs from this workshop. We also check for any barriers to participating, such as potential road work, short-term rental status, etc. We selected projects that are best suited for our program given limited grant funding. If selected, we will prompt you to find a green sector contractor who can complete your work. You will submit a formal bid to us with the details from your selected contractor. If you are DIYing all or part of your project, you will submit a DIY homeowner bid to us. An example of this will be provided to you. We will approve your bid, come to your property for a site visit, and then give permission to start work. Please do not begin work until after we have given you the go-ahead and you have completed the agreement. Projects started before this part of the process are forfeited. You have 1 year to complete your project after signing the agreement. If you run into any complications or decide to change any aspect of your design, please do contact us. If you did not receive approval, this can also forfeit your project from the FYI program. When your project is complete, you will advise FYI staff and we will make a final site visit. Finally, you'll receive your check in the mail for your taxable rebate. So that's the general timeline. We do try to work with homeowners. So if you miss a date or something like that, like try not to, but don't just give up. Please just contact us and we will try to work with you. Here are some tips for when you are looking for a contractor if you do choose to go the contractor route. The ultimate goal of green infrastructure, once again, is to hold water where it falls, keeping it out of the street and drainage system. If you hire a contractor outside of our green sector directory, they may have different ideas on how to deal with water, but don't let them talk you into changing your water smart design. Disconnecting your gutters is a really good start. Connected gutters don't allow for water to naturally recharge our soils and contributes directly to overwhelming the drainage system. Instead, maybe install a rain barrel and connect the overflow to a rain garden. We understand the want to raise your property. Subsidence is such an issue in New Orleans that some streets are higher than the surrounding areas. But raising your property so that it is higher than your neighbors is actually illegal because you're making someone else deal with your runoff. There are other ways to counteract flooding on your property. Do not put paving back down. There are permeable paving solutions that work just as well, if not better. And then finally, it's fine to guide overflow away from your house and towards the street, but remember the ultimate goal of green infrastructure in the FYI program is to capture as much stormwater as possible and manage it on site, not to push it into and overwhelm the city drainage system. You'll be working with very small local businesses most likely, so please be respectful of the contractor's time. Don't expect them to come out to your property more than once before you finalize a contract, and please understand that they have a lot of ongoing projects. A lot of supply chain issues are still, from COVID and from Ida are still affecting a lot of these local small businesses, so please be patient with them. Let them know if you choose another contractor or if your timeline changes. So since concrete can be layered, do your best to see how far down your paving goes. Use a shovel or post digger at the edge of a paved area to see how far down it goes. Most paving removal companies will charge you for X inches of paving and charge more if additional paving is discovered. Make sure to check in about their policy. This is our green sector directory made in partnership with Stay Local. The businesses listed here are vetted by FYI based on their knowledge and ability to install green infrastructure. We highly recommend you contact them first, but you can use a contractor that is not on this list or even DIY your project. We'll send you a link to the directory, but the URL is www.staylocal.org/greensector. So now we are going to review the next steps of the FYI process, design submissions. We're going to go over different features of designs that make them not only more competitive for the FYI program, but also more effective in combating flooding and standing water issues. In your workshop reminder email, you should have received graph paper to get you started on your design. As we'll see, there are many different ways to create your design that doesn't require graph paper. We do not expect professional grade design submissions. You can definitely do this. So on screen are some elements we expect to see in your design. This list is available on our website, and I think we've also sent it to you, or we will send it to you. We want the design to match what we'll see when we come out to your property for a site visit. Make it easy to orient ourselves when we arrive. Labeling the street and the front of house helps. We ask that you provide two designs, a before design, what your yard looks like today, and an after design, how it will look after your FYI project is complete. Here are some more elements that would be helpful to include in your designs. This list is also available on our website. The more clear, legible, and detailed a design is, the better we are able to determine whether or not your project is a good fit for the Front Yard Initiative. Now we're going to take a look at some past approved design submissions and what made them so good. So this design is really easy to read. In the before design, the homeowner labeled the street, property line, house, sidewalk, and stairs. They measured out each section of concrete and labeled the square footage that they plan to remove. The legend clearly differentiates between paving, gravel, and grass. In the after design, they labeled the different native plants and materials they plan to use in the legend. We have a clear understanding of their after vision. As you can see from the picture, some aspects of the design were changed during the installation process. We expect this to happen, but please do contact us to review the changes you plan. If the finished project deviates too much from the accepted design submission, you are not guaranteed to receive the FYI reimbursement. Here's a really good after design. Once again, different materials are labeled, such as stepping stones, gravel, and the many different types of native plants. They indicated how many square feet of concrete is to be removed, where major utilities are, such as the AC unit, and labeled the street. You get a very clear vision of the completed project from this design. It's even fairly to scale, which is not required, but is very cool. This homeowner wasn't really big on drawing, so they instead just used labels. They labeled the sidewalk, fence, driveway, stairs, house porch, and the materials present in the right-of-way. We could not approve this design outright because it does not specify the types of plants to be used. It's okay to be uncertain of the exact plants you plan to use, and we expect some small aspects of your design to change as you move on to the installation process. But specifying some plants in your design lets us know that you have given serious consideration to your project and expect to use a majority native plants. This homeowner was ultimately approved after informing us she planned to hire a local native plant specialist to landscape her yard. So this is a good example of design that was ultimately accepted, but also required clarification from the homeowner. Since the design relies heavily on a permeable surface and there are no plans for other forms of green infrastructure, such as rain barrels or native plants, we asked the homeowner to specify the depth of the driveway. They planned for a 7-inch depth, which is great. We usually only recommend a 4 to 6-inch depth. If your design is going to heavily focus on only one type of green infrastructure, such as a permeable driveway, be sure to include details such as depth and materials. So feel free to get creative with it and do what works for you. We receive designs that vary greatly in complexity and artistic skill. This is not what we are judging your design on, as long as we understand your vision and it aligns with our goals. Visibility, inspiration, on-site water capture, and pavement removal. Then you have a competitive design. Remember, designs will be due in 2 weeks on Monday, February 7th, and you will hear back from us the following Monday, February 14th. You will receive an email this Monday inviting you to submit your design and with other details. Now let's take a look at some past FYI projects to get y'all inspired and revved up to make your own green designs. Here are a few examples of French drains or infiltration trenches. It's popular to install one along the side of your house to capture runoff from your roof. They are typically excavated 6 inches to 2 feet and backfilled with aggregate. Sometimes a perforated pipe is installed as well. French drains are meant to capture and convey water, which means grading is really important. This can help reduce standing water issues next to and underneath your foundation, which can cause mosquito population issues, foundation problems, and even termite infestations. These homeowners replaced their concrete with permeable surfaces and raised garden beds, and lots of native plants. This homeowner replaced their old impermeable sidewalk with an ADA compliant permeable sidewalk. The bricks are not mortared in and instead set in sand. You can also see that they added a rain garden next to their house and in the right of way with some trees. Another cool thing about permeable surfaces such as this sidewalk is that if part of it breaks, it is much easier and cost effective to fix than concrete because you can just fix that one part. When measuring out your concrete, you do not have to include your sidewalk if you plan to leave it alone. We understand a lot of homeowners don't want to touch the sidewalk because the permitting process can be difficult. These homeowners designed overflowing gardens with edible, native, and ornamental plants. These installations attract pollinators, birds, and provide food for the homeowners. These two projects are great examples of how green infrastructure can provide economic, health, and environmental benefits while reducing flood risk. This homeowner hired a landscape architect to maximize their space. Only 1,000 square feet of concrete was removed from this yard, but it is now able to hold around 3,300 gallons of stormwater. To put this in perspective, this 1,000 square foot rain garden is holding stormwater for over 3,500 square feet of impermeable surfaces during an 1.5-inch rain event. I hope some of these projects caught your interest and inspired you. Let's review the difference between a block that relies solely on gray infrastructure and a block that integrates green infrastructure. This is an unhealthy block. Rain falls, hits paved impermeable surfaces, runs into the street, and often overwhelms the drainage system, causing flooding. This does not allow for the water table to be naturally recharged and causes subsidence. We commonly have issues such as foundation shifting and sinking and potholes due to subsidence because of our high content of shrink swell soils such as clay. A lack of green spaces encourages cars to park on sidewalks and front lawns. This is unsafe for pedestrians and can cause underground utility damage for your house. In contrast, this is a healthy block. What you see here is a lot of green space, native trees and plants, cars are parked on the street instead of their yards and sidewalks, and there is overall less impermeable surfaces. A healthy block handles water on site. Rain falls, and instead of being pumped out, it soaks into the soil. This reduces flood risk and recharges the water table, slowing subsidence and keeping our soils stable. So let's review the next steps of the FYI program one more time. You're going to observe your property during it and after a rain event. Look for signs of pooling water, washout stains, and moss growth are all signs of standing water. These areas will be the lowest areas in your yard and will help guide you in your design. Determine your yard square footage by measuring the length and the width of your yard and multiplying those two measurements with one another. Review all the FYI materials given to you before this workshop. We will be sending you a follow-up email shortly with a recording of this workshop for your review, attachments, and links to other helpful resources, and an invitation to submit your design. You'll probably get that on Monday or Tuesday of next week. Start your design. Draw how your yard currently looks for your before design and how you envision it to look in your after design. I highly recommend you review our FYI design requirements page on our website. That has all the design checklists that we went over earlier. Designs do not include all the required elements will not be accepted. Then finally submit your design. You will have 2 weeks to submit your design. That means all designs are due by the end of the day, Monday, February 7th. We'll review all the design within a week after the due date. You will be notified by Monday, February 14th, whether your design has been accepted or if we have suggested revisions. Okay. And then finally, I want to say a quick thank you to some of our collaborators who make the Front Yard Initiative thrive. They're up on screen now. And then I want to thank you for attending and listening. Here are a bunch of ways to connect with us online. Please feel free to follow up with us any questions you may have. You can email us at FYI@urbanconservancy.org. Or give us a call at 504-717-6187, which quite a few of you know that number now and have already given us a call. You will receive, I know I said a lot of stuff, but I like to repeat myself. You will receive a follow-up email with next steps by Monday. I look forward to reviewing all of y'all's designs. I got this workshop in right in time. To a science, we have it down to a science. This is the end of the mandatory workshop. We will now open up for discussion, but if you all want to get on with your Saturdays, you are welcome to leave. Once again, thank you so much for spending your Saturday morning with us. And I'm sorry for the confusion.